Oh yeah. Yeah, this is great. I'll go ahead and start, and is kind of like I said, because it's informal um and because it's free. I I'm doing these because you may have gathered from any of my communications. This is like a subject I feel pretty strongly about, and just I'm passionate about, and it's something I feel like I can share, and I want to share. Um, so I'm happy to do it and offer that to anybody who is inclined to to listen to what I have to say. Um, and so as we get started here, I'll start also by just saying, um, these are my feelings, these are my experiences, these are um, what I'm going to talk about tonight is just some of they represent my personal experiences, in the sense of what I feel like are my successes and failures as an artist, and how I want that to um, how that informs and inspires me as I make work moving forward, or as I kind of go back and kind of contemplate the work that I've made. Um, so, with all of that said, if anything doesn't strike or ring a chord with you guys, that's don't feel like this is wrong, or that this isn't right. And so, in the big picture of things, what I'm talking about tonight, there's no set course of action that's going to kind of drive the creative spirit. So this is it's like it's a very personal space, um, but there are some aspects to it that I really feel strongly about, that people can tie into and to access, to kind of make the most of make the most of being a creative being. So, because we're all creative people, and so as we make work, whatever that work is in our lives, I make prints, drawings, and paintings, primarily two-dimensional things. But if you're a sculptor, if you're a songwriter, if you're a writer, even if you perform anything, any time that you bring something um, into the world where before there was not, that is that is the creative coming through, and maybe and this is maybe just a little train of consciousness, but I say coming through, and I say that specifically, it's as a coming through, not like coming from. That is my that's my general feeling, as far as the great creative work, or the that of our that we experience, is work that comes through us, not necessarily of us. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we go. But just to touch on that a little bit more now, I want to kind of delineate two different types of this creative process. And so when I talk about creative spirit, I'm talking about a process that is not a cognitive process. And so what I mean by that is, uh, when I was a young artist, so maybe I'll give you an example. When I was a younger artist in art school, and this just could be a product of having art assignments. But as a young artist, I would develop an idea, have an idea in my mind, or just generate an image in my mind, and then I would put that image out on paper, or I would create whatever it was that I had thought up in my head. And that was primarily how I would make art, in my younger days. Now, that wasn't always necessarily the case, but generally the case as a developing artist. That's how I would create my art. And I put that under the category of like cognitive development. of a piece of artwork. And so I don't want to, and also don't want to give the impression that I think that that's wrong or bad. That when you think of something and try and put that out on paper or out into the world, that that is the wrong way to go about developing a piece of work. That that's not necessarily the case. There's some fantastic artwork that's been done that way, some beautiful stuff, and so I don't want to don't think I'm kind of like degrading that in any way. But what I will say is that from my own personal experience creating art that way, that that art always left me wanting. And so for many years, I couldn't figure out why that was the case. And ultimately, um, I kind of through some self discovery felt like that the reason that that was the case was that it was just my own idea. And when I go back and look at a piece of artwork that is just an idea that I thought of cognitively in my mental space, that is what that image is. It is the idea. Um, and but the unfortunate part of that is that that's all it is. And so it stops right there. That's as far as like my idea can carry. It's like, okay, somebody will see that image and they'll feel like, okay, that's that idea. I recognize that idea, and maybe I respond to that idea, and that's good and fine. Um, but um, but I didn't want something that I couldn't keep coming back to and finding something more in. You know, it's kind of like when you're in a relationship with another person, for example, um, they're always changing. You know, the world around us is always changing. Everything is in this state of flux. And so whenever you are presented with a new environment or a new person or even a new person in a new moment, like 30 seconds later, you know, these are things that there's depth there that you don't that you can't there's a depth there that's a little bit more hard to put your finger on as far as you keep coming back to these people, you keep coming back to these places, even maybe the same waterfall you visit, 50 times a year, but it's new every time you go. And I wanted something like that more. I wanted something more like that in my artwork. And years ago, I was given a book by my cousin, and it was titled Free Play. I highly recommend it if anybody's interested in this. But it was about improvisation. The guy who wrote it was a Russian cellist, I think, Stefan Nekmanovich. And the thing about this book that kind of inspired me was it kind of began training me to look outside of my own cognitive mental resources and to generate art through the means of improvisation. So and the reason that this was really helpful and enlightening for me was that I started to recognize that through that process, and it was imperfect at first, but through the process of improvisation, I was arriving at works of art that I wouldn't I would never have been able to conceptualize from the beginning. And so by coming to that point, I started to I really wanted to dig deeper and dive deeper into like the whole process of how where did this work of art come from? Because it yeah, I mean, I made it, but it was it is not it wasn't from me. It like I said at the beginning, it came through me. And and part of that is when you're creating a piece of artwork, and here's where I'm going to speak. I'm not. I don't want to project on you, but from my point of view, when you're creating a work of artwork, it is it's a conversation. It's a communication and a constant. back and forth of reflection. So when I do something, um, put something down on a piece of paper, or even write words into a notebook, I am I am responding to what I write, or what I draw, and based on what little I have, then I respond to that, and that is what creates the next step in the progress of creating the work. It's not it's not a process of I have this wholly conceptualized picture in my head of what this is going to be. It's that I'm able to develop this as I go, and I find that when I do that, I create an image or write a story with more depth, and understanding than I would have if I just conceptualized something from the beginning. And the other added benefit of this is that I have created a work of art that is sincerely speaking to me the things that I need to hear. And so I think this is another really important aspect of working with like a creative spirit, and that openness. If you aren't open to what's going to be reflected back at you, then then the work that you make is not going to resonate with others, um, in the same way. There's a quote by Robert Frost. He says, "No tears in the poet, no tears in the reader, no surprise in the author, no surprise in the reader." And what that means is, if to in that paraphrasing, it's like you have to enter into the art making process with this emotional sincerity, this kind of like this, because without that, what gets reflected is something that is cognitive, like I said, of the mind. um, and again, not that that is bad or wrong, it's just different. And in my personal perception, not as deep or meaningful as I want the art that I live with to be. And so so yeah, that is that's a little bit of how I go about. That's kind of like my introductory kind of a spiel there. But um, I think that I think getting out of your own way is part of is the biggest difficulty there, because as creative people, and and I am certainly this happens to me as well, but you run into creative blocks, or you have time and space where you want to create, or you feel like you need to create, or maybe you're even in a place where you have to create, and it's just not there. um think that ultimately that's okay. And that's the hardest thing to hear, like from a creative person. But I think that maybe it's good to hear too that I can't create all. I can't be this create everything I want to create all the time, or sometimes I can't even do it when I want to do it. Um, but there is a but there's this, what I think is also really important is to develop a sensitivity, and the sensitivities that you need to develop are to the aspects of this world that are so subtle. They're not of they're not of the senses. They are intangible subtleties that you become aware of as you produce creative works in your life. And what I mean by that is when and part of this comes from non censorship. So when I say non censorship, I mean, we all have within us this inner critic. And so when I start a piece of work, um, I, I maybe 20 years ago I might have thought this, but now I don't. I don't sit around and think, oh gosh, I've already drawn 15 badgers. I don't need to draw another badger, you know. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Or you know what? I love clouds, and be like, that's cliche and overdone and boring, and everybody does clouds, and people do clouds better than I do. And all of these inner critics are talking when you're getting ready to face a piece of artwork. And I'm talking in terms of visual art, but again, I don't want it to be just that either. So this applies to everything. um that inner critic can be pretty harsh. And but what I would contend is that we all have within us, if we are being honest and sincere with ourselves, that there's something about clouds. There's some reason that I am drawn to this. um Not only that, there is some reason I'm drawn to this at this moment, because a week from now I might not be interested in them at all. But right now I am. And that's important to recognize, that when we have an inkling, it it has the potential to be something magnificent and inspirational, or profound. And maybe it will only ever be those things to you, but that's good enough. So when you have these inklings, um, you need to follow them. This is the beginning of the creative, that the spirit that is guiding you down this little path. You know, one one light at a time. Because if the whole path was lit all at once, then maybe you would decide you didn't want to go down it. I don't know. But that discovery and you might get to the end of this path, and it might be like, I have not found what I'm looking for here, or this isn't that great. That may happen. Um, but you might but you're not going to find something that you would have thought of at the beginning. That's because of the process. The process is you are reflecting, and when you're honest and sincere, and you can silence that inner critic, and be in a place of peace, then then it's then you can hear back, from whatever it is that you are creating. um and when you do this, um, and again, this is my experience, so maybe I should say when I do this. But my experience has been, um, when I make a work that resonates with me, that speaks back to me, that is sincere and it's honest, and it's exactly what I need to hear in that moment. Um, Not something that I could have told myself just sitting there and telling myself, or showing myself. But when I achieve that, those images, they resonate with others. And I think that also points to this undercurrent of this creative force, I'll just say, that is not of us that is coming through us that kind of ties us together. We share, this is a shared, we live in this shared world, and we have a shared experience with other people. And you know creative the creative process, I think, at its best is when it kind of opens this little window to the unseen world. What you are creating has never been seen before, um, never been heard before by anybody. And um, so you're bringing this to life. And at the same time, I also, and the other reason I feel really passionate about this subject is because I feel like this is a real responsibility of creative people. um it's not something to be taken lightly. This can have a real effect. you know I see it all the time. Right now, the art form of our time is TikTok. And that is not the depth and breadth and scope of the art that can and inspire and tie us together. And so that's one of the reasons I feel really strongly about this whole creative process. And I don't want to knock TikTok. I mean, who knows? I think that, I mean, I don't know enough about it to know. Maybe I could work with it, but I don't think that. But I don't think so. I don't think I could, because I think that um, when you create, the most sincere, like, honest stuff that comes out is the stuff that is directly tied to you as the artist. So the more filters you put between you and whoever is going to be experiencing that piece of artwork, whatever it is, like I said, is kind of creates a fog of of what um, of what the original artist was attempting, or trying to present. Um, there's a comment. Oh, Emily. Um, yes, I love that. I don't know if you're seeing. She said it that what we say, what I'm saying, it resonates, and or how our work can resonate with others. It's like wind blowing through a flute, like you say, or blowing through the trees. It is all of those. It's it's all of those hollow spaces that make these beautiful resonating sounds. And so yeah, so that begs the question, right? We're the hollows, right? We're not the wind. Um, so so when we talk about spirit, I have some ideas about this. Um, and I really feel like spirit. I think a good way to think about spirit is it to think about it in terms of energy. I think that is a helpful. I think that that's a helpful way to think about. I think that's a helpful way to think about it, because energy moves, and that's what's happening. This creative spirit is something that moves. It's not stagnant. When something is stagnant, it loses life, and we know that from nature. I mean, that's just the way it is. Anytime something becomes stagnant, it loses its vibrancy and its life. If it's a plant, it starts to get brittle or wilt or decay. Same with people. You don't move, get stiff. I know I do. Um, so I think that's a really important way to think about it. Um, that doesn't mean that, like I said earlier, that that you're always going to have access to this. You know, the other thing that I think is helpful to think about when I talk about the creative spirit and like the art making process or the creative process is that it is also cyclical. So you can't only make art. It's not, it doesn't, it doesn't work like that. So is art, because art is a reflection. Art is your communication. It is your conversation. You need space away from it. Um, and that's okay, because and you need to not worry about when it's going to come back, because I think that in some people's mind, and I say that because it used to be in mine, is I would worry, oh my gosh, I haven't made a drawing in like 2 months. Why haven't I done that? I mean, I think it's helpful for artists to hear other artists talk about these types of things, um because it's just the nature of it. It's okay. It comes back. Um, it does. It comes back. And you don't know how long you're going to have it. And it's a gift when it does. But it's also a gift when it goes. It's like it's a time to rest and reflect. And I think that the reflection piece is I know maybe I'm jumping around here, but I'm just kind of going with the flow. But the reflection piece is a helpful and practical piece of this puzzle, I think, because what reflection does is it teaches you to be sensitive. What I was talking about earlier about learning to be sensitive to these subtle changes and subtle nuances of what you're doing. That doesn't just come from nothing. Well, actually, it does come from nothing, because um, when you're full, you can't. There's nothing that can come in. You know, is when you're empty is when those things can come into you, and so when there's nothing, that is when the something comes. Um, so the cycle there is you practice your art and you let things sit, and um and you don't force things. um Forcing things is kind of in the that kind of cognitive category. I I have to do this. I have to make, whether it's for work or whatever you're doing. I have to perform. I have to do this. That is a that's forcing something. And I'm not saying not to do that at all. I'm just saying that when you force something, the you're not going to arrive at your best work. When you force something, it's it lasts for a time, but it's not something that, in my experience, sticks with me. Um, so, if since we're talking about cycles, the other cycle that kind of happens as far as an artist is concerned, and this is something else that I think the self-critic will talk often about, is the quality of work that you do. Am I good enough? Are the words I'm writing good enough? Am I presenting things well enough? Is my drawing good enough? Am I good enough at this thing even be doing this? And and the answer is obviously yes. Of course you are. It doesn't matter. It's like, so that's, to me right now, that's an absurd question. You ask a 3-year-old if they should be making art, And they're going to say, yeah, why not? Should be the same with anybody. The thing that matters, the thing that matters is not the the craft. You know, I'm not saying that craft doesn't have a place, and I'll get to that in a moment. But what I will say is that if I had a choice, I would choose spirit over craft any day of the week. You know, I absolutely would. A young person, making this like and giving you something because like they were inspired to make this thing. Oh my gosh, it touches you, and it's really really impactful. Now, what I will say though too, um, that is kind of like the child's mark represents that kind of undirected, chaotic free spirit. And that's fantastic. They're accessing that. They're just letting it come. Like my daughters, they don't always want to draw, but when they do, they go at it, and that's good. Um, that's good. If you've had children and if you probably have seen as they grow, they start stopping doing those types of things. I was like, oh, I don't draw as good as you do, Dad. Oh, well, of course not. I'm just kidding. Um, but but for real though, it's like, why are you stopping? Why are you stopping? You should keep on expressing yourself, and you just letting the self critic get in the way. But it does bring me to the next cycle that I did want to talk about before I get completely off, and that is the cycle of practice. And so, what I mean by this is that, as an adult, we have within us the capacity to better our craft, to be better at what we do. And so we practice our form. Like for me, it's practice drawing, and I practice carving. And I don't practice by like, oh, I'm gonna carve out all these little lines, or I'm just gonna like, oh, I'm just gonna draw an apple over and over again. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the process of doing it. You know, if you want to sing songs, just sing songs. Or if you want to do what you want to do. And but that is the practice, and the more you do that, the better you get. At a certain point, the cycle comes around, and you forget the form. When I'm drawing, I'm no longer thinking about all the marks that I'm making. I'm not thinking about how I should design this space. I'm not thinking about um, how to hold my knife, or how to hold my brush, or what two colors I should mix. I'm not thinking about any of that stuff. That all gets forgotten, so that I can be empty. And you can't get to that place unless you have practiced the form. So there's the form, and then forget the form. And that's that other cycle. And so as an adult, and specifically as a practicing artist in whatever field or medium, you have the potential over the child to where the child has this undirected free spirit. You have you can direct the spirit. You have the capacity to push for, kind of create this space for the spirit to come through, because you are conversing, you are teasing out what it is that is trying to come through into this space. Um, I find that it's helpful, when I talk about having a conversation with your artwork. Um, actually, you can actually have a real conversation if you want. This is where I started with the improvisational exercises. I started the first few that I started with. is I started telling stories to myself, and I would start with, I don't know, a subject or a character or an animal or a location, and then I would ask myself, well, why this character? What's going on with this character? And the very first one, I'll use the example of the very first story I did in this exercise, and I know because I remember all of my stories. And the first one was I was folding laundry in Richmond and at a laundromat. And I asked myself, I was, okay, I'm going to practice this because I can do this while I'm folding laundry. And so I was like, and nobody else was in the laundromat. And so I was like, okay, there's a frog. I remember it was really difficult. I was like, no, I don't want to start with a frog. And I don't even know why I thought of a frog. But part of the exercise was like, I can no self-critic. I'm gonna not censor this. I'm gonna just let it whatever comes. So it's like, okay, what is it about this frog? And it's like, oh, this frog has wings. I was like, okay. And so, I start going along this road, and what happens next? This boy finds the frog. Well, what happens after that? Well, the boy wants to catch the frog. Well, then what happens? What happens after that? Well, can't catch a frog. Then, I don't know if you want to hear the story or not. No, I have you guys going. I'll tell it in shortened fashion. So the boy tries to catch the frog, and he can't catch the frog. The frog jumps up into a tree, and the frog starts singing. And the boy's like, "Oh my gosh, this frog is singing now! I've never heard of a singing frog, and it's just this beautiful song." So the boy stays and listens to the frog singing, and just forgets about time and everything. And he's with this frog all night, listening to the frog sing. And when the next morning comes, the frog flies off into the sunset. And the boy was just devastated. It's like, oh, and that because it was so beautiful, it was such a magical experience for him, and he felt bad. He felt disappointed. And he wanted to be able to tell the frog thank you, and that was his thought as he was heading back home. And then as he was heading back home, he found this other little frog, and this frog is smaller, but it doesn't have any wings. And so the boy says, "Well, I in place of a thank you to the other frog, I'm going to sing. I'll just sing to this frog. I'm sure it won't be as good, but I'll sing to this frog, and I'll just sing as long as it wants to listen." And that little frog stayed and it listened, and the boy kept singing, and it sang all night long, and the frog stayed there. And the next morning, the sun came up, and the boy stopped singing, and he looks at the sun, and the sun started singing to him, but not through his ears, to his heart. And so the boy flew off into the sunrise because he grew wings in the night. Anyway, like I didn't know where that was going. And that was really exciting to me as an artist, to like find that discovery point of something that I would not have been able to conceptualize like in a million years. I'm not gonna, it's just, it's just exciting as an artist. And that's the other thing too. It's exciting as an artist to not know, um, to not know. I mean, it's scary too, because what if you end up somewhere that maybe might be a disappointment to you, or even worse, to like other people. um, I'll tell stories to my girls, um, and yeah, I'm really grateful for that whole process because thank you. Um, the whole process of telling stories has been great for me because it's really helped me develop these sensitivities. Um, and I'll tell stories to my girls, and sometimes they're just not very good, and that's okay. But sometimes they are. Oh man, I just like, wow, I can't believe that came out of my mouth. And I'm writing these down, and I work through them. The artwork is the same way for me. There's no real difference. So um, I will make, usually I start with a small sketch here. Have my, I'm going to do something fancy here. I have my overhead camera. See if this works. All right. So this is my notes, and this is my sketchbook here. But I'll start with a sketch. Oh, there's this one. I don't know how familiar you are all with all of my work, but there's the little sketch of a um, this is Badger and this is my daughter. I don't usually do my daughter in my work. That's another topic, why I use animals, but maybe for another time. But but yeah, so this is a very small. It's a loose sketch. Um, I'm trying to find another one. Um, and there's all sorts of things in my sketchbook. So I'll have drawings and I'll have writings and stories and color studies, and just different ideas. Sometimes it's nice to see what other people put in their sketchbooks too. But these are all represent inklings, inklings of ideas that aren't fully fleshed out. And I like doing working this way because it creates a built-in it creates a built-in um, process for me to have this conversation. So because of the steps that I take, so if I have this little sketch that I do, sometimes I'm interested in it right away, and sometimes I'll put it down. And there have been some that I pick up years later. I go back to my sketchbooks sometimes, and I find something that I did, 4 years ago, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I really like this. Its time wasn't then, but its time may be now. Um, and the other thing, so the next thing I'll do is I will draw directly onto my wood block that I carve into, and the when I take an image and put it onto a wood block, I redraw it completely. It helps that my sketch is not very super detailed, um, but it allows me this flexibility and this openness to change. I'm not attached to what I am doing, or attached to the image as I think it should be. I'm not trying to recreate exactly what's there. I give myself the freedom to change as I go, um, and that is some of that subtle sensitivity that I'm talking about. It's looking at something or hearing something, um, that um, it's looking at something or hearing something, and you just know what's right about it, and you just know what's not right about it. It's hard to. This is something that's hard to explain, um, but it comes as you develop sensitivities. The more you are in a space, working in a certain media, or, honestly, the more you're doing anything, the more you cook, the more you clean. I mean, I like, you know certain things, like, without even thinking twice about it. And so if you're in that space, then as I'm drawing, I will be able to look at what I have done and be like, something's not right. Maybe the angle of this mountain isn't right, and I want it to feel more sweeping. I don't want it to feel like it's holding something. Or maybe, these are all subtle things that get that aren't actively shared and don't need to be, and honestly shouldn't be, you know, because one thing that the flip side of the creative spirit, the creative process, is the person who's experiencing the art. And you don't want to explain that away. When you have something that's deep and meaningful, or that you've created with your own spirit, your own sincerity, your honest effort, um, if this is not to say you can't talk to people about your work, but um, the person that experiences that work also can develop sensitivities as well. They can respond to what you have, and they don't have to have words for it. I don't always have words for why I have changed something. I just used an example of like, oh, I want the angle of this mountain to feel like it's cradling or holding something, to kind of, and that makes me feel like it's right for what I need in that moment, or what I am want to communicate back and forth with at that moment. And maybe that is something that I need, that I didn't even know I needed, you know? And I'm not going to have that if I don't have that conversation. And if I'm not honest or sincere, and when I'm creating the work, then the work is not going to resonate in the same way with the person who's experiencing that work. And the person then that experiences that sincere work, they will feel something. That has been my experience, like almost without exception. It's it's true. And another thing to keep in mind about that, though, is that not everything that you do will resonate with everybody. And I think I mentioned it earlier. Sometimes you'll make a piece that's everybody's gonna love it, and they're gonna feel it. And sometimes it's just gonna be you. And I say that because I hope so. Because if you're not making the work that resonates with you, you should be baseline. If you're making the work because you want it to resonate with somebody else, but it doesn't resonate with you, then it's probably not going to resonate with anyone else in the same way, in the way that you want it to. It's got to be, you have got to be the one, because you're the creator. I mean, not the originator, but you're that hollow that's making this beautiful music. And so you're not the wind, but you want people to hear the song, and you want the people to hear the song to feel it. That's what I want. And so that is yeah, just kind of lost my train of thought. It just left. um does anybody have questions? You're welcome to put them in the chat, or you're even welcome to unmute, but we're getting close to we're getting close to the end, so maybe I should do that since I lost my train of thought. Yeah. Corey, yeah.
Yeah, real quick, you were talking about the laundromat in Richmond, and you were talking about this story that came through you. What I wrote it down. What were you feeling in that laundromat that you wanted to communicate about yourself, that you wanted to it's not necessarily you wanted to connect that story to others, but what was it in you that you were wanting to say through that story? Just as
Yeah.
like a example, not as like a
Yeah, no, totally. So short answer
yeah.
is, there was nothing I was trying to say. Um, in hindsight, I can go back to that story and knowing where I was, um, I as an artist, I can relate. I can put myself in this space. I can put myself at a certain point, I put myself in this space as the boy. I'm an artist. And here are these other artists, and they're beautiful and inspiring. They're singing, they're doing this stuff. And then I want to do my best, but it's all I can do. All I can do is my best. And you know what I find at the end of that story? My best is good enough. Not only that, my best is like better than good enough. And so I didn't know that's what I was going to get from it. And that's what I got from that story in that time. Now I can come back to that story and I can feel differently about it, you know, because sometimes I'm not the boy. I'm not usually the frog that has the wings. I'm that little frog who's just kind of there, you know, just like while the world is spinning, while these other things are going on all around me. It's that type of is that type of experience in a work that I'm trying to, you know, that I want because I because I don't know what I need. Like, that is, I think that gets to the crux of it. Like if I try to think about what I need, okay, yeah, well, I need food and I need a house and I need to pay the bills. But like, no, what is it that I need? And like, what do I, why am I existing here? What am I doing? Like, I'm struggling with these things, and everybody struggles with stuff. My family is struggling with these issues. Oh, how do I deal with all of this stuff? You know, all of my work is super personal. There's not a one piece that isn't wholly part of like something that I needed in that moment. And like, so for me as an artist, this is art making is an exceedingly um, personal, selfish endeavor. I do this for myself because honestly, there's not a ton of artwork out there that speaks to me, what I need to hear in this moment. It's just, I mean, some of it's good. I'm not saying it's not good, but I mean, but as a creative person, this is this is what this is the potential. Like for me right now, speaking to you and to you few people here, like when I tell that story, what I think now, it's like this is this story is what we can do. This story is not about being any one of these characters. This is a story about potential. Like we all have this potential. I'm not just the boy, you know? Maybe I am that frog with wings, right? We have within us this potential, but it just takes being present and takes being honest and sincere. It also takes not attaching. Um, Non-attachment, and maybe that's a little bit non sequitur, but like the when we attach to an idea, sometimes like I'm able to come back to that story differently because I'm not attached to a singular idea of what that is. The singular ideas come from that cognitive space, that cognitive mind. You know, I want freedom. Spirit wants freedom. It wants to move, it wants to flow, it wants to expand, you know? And so it can't do that if I am cranking it in or if I am filled up with a bunch of stuff. And when I say filled up with a bunch of stuff, it just means that I'm thinking about what I'm going to make for dinner. Like, oh, this job is not going to get done by the end of the day, or this is, I got to go do, whatever it is that you're filling yourself up with. That I'm not saying that those things aren't part of our lives, and to like you can't just live in a state of complete nothing. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that that we have the capacity to let those things go when we need to and when we want to. And when we do, it allows something bigger to come in. But it's not gonna happen if we're not open. And that's what I mean by the non-attachment. It's kind of like letting things go. I practice Tai Chi, and so you know, this is a lot of kind of like redirection of energy, or I didn't really get to talk about it too much here, but this idea, I'll just briefly mention this idea that body, mind, and spirit are one. We're not like, it's not just spirit one day and body this day and mind this day, or even in this moment, this moment, and this moment. It is all three things. And finding a practice that can bring that together is good. All right, let me look at anybody have more questions? I see Emily, you put another thing. You're so sweet. Any more questions? Because I know we're pretty much here at the end of things. I'm sorry. You can unmute if you want. If nobody has questions, that is totally fine. And yeah. So
thank you very much.
Oh, you are so welcome. Gabriel says, will you be doing more of these regularly? I love talking about this stuff, and so I probably will do some more of these. Doing the couple of these that I have done has kind of inspired me to kind of dig even deeper, which I'm kind of excited about. So like I'm contemplating another, like a more involved class on the subject, but that there's, because I have kind of broken things down into 4 main categories. But yeah, you guys are so welcome. I'm so glad to everybody that came out. Yeah, I mean, I'm just, it's just super grateful, yeah, but
Yeah.
be on the lookout. I probably will do this again. I can't get away from it. It's something that that I'm inspired, and I'm inspired to. So yeah, and I do. I think everybody here, everybody really, but and I appreciate all you guys, and everybody has the potential to be whatever they want, to find this, get filled up. I think it's really important. People need to be creative and not just practicing artists. I know that probably this is, that's the the bulk of maybe people here, but yeah, this is vital. This is vital stuff, I think, for people. It just helps, you know. We're creative beings, So anyway, like I said, thank you guys so much for coming out. So I really appreciate everybody.
Thank you. We really appreciate this. This is an amazing gift.
Yeah, but I'm glad you appreciate it. Yeah, I'm happy to offer it. Happy to do it. Yeah. All right. Well, I wish you all a great weekend and a lovely evening. So, all right.
All right.
Until
Good
next
night.
time.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Night.
Bye.